So recently, Bill, there was a news article online that pretty much everybody has seen by now. And, it's these people in Vegas and a UFO landed in their backyard.
That's not funny.
Right? So, of course, I love it. Like, I love the UFO conversation, mainly because it makes me really think about like everything. What would change if all of a sudden, the mothership is over every town? Like, and my fascination is that literally everything changes, I think, you know. So here we go. Mainstream news has now started talking about this, like a UFO landed in your backyard. And my question is, okay, now what?
Right. Well, it kind of, I know I saw it, you saw it, and it's out there on Yahoo and mainstream
Everywhere.
media. Now, the other one is this guy that is very high level intelligence, and meaning in the intelligence agencies, right at the very top, and he's come out as a quote unquote whistleblower with the Department of Defense's permission. That's important, with their permission, and said, we have a lot of actual alien spacecraft already
Yeah.
that we've gotten because of crashes or other, quote unquote, other methods, that we now actually have the spacecraft and have had for a long time. And he has these locations around the world that we have them in. And anyway, it's what's fascinating to me is the drip, the
Mhm.
drip of, oh, I accidentally released, and like it, but it's okay. It's okay. And it's, because nothing gets out of that Pentagon without, getting, if they don't want it out, it ain't getting out.
No, and you know what? What's different about this? What you're talking about is actually really, really old news. So, there are all kinds of other people who've come out. Lou Elizondo is one of them who worked in the Pentagon. And that was a whole thing where they tried to say, no, he didn't work in the Pentagon, but he has all of the documentation. So kind of seemed like a little fake. They're faking you out. Like, no, we're not allowing him to talk about this, right?
Right.
There's all kinds of them. What's different about this guy and this story is that mainstream news is reporting on it as though it's a regular news story on any other day. And in the past, none of them did that. The not the mainstream news, but YouTube channels and YouTube news and people who are in the know in the UFO community know about this stuff. And we're like, yeah, that's old news. And next, but there's something about the shifting of the public's opinion on this that's important. They're opening it up and letting the mainstream people know it's okay to talk about it and think about it, wonder about it, talk amongst yourselves, kind of a thing. That's what's different.
Substantially different.
Uh-huh.
Substantially. That if you were an airline pilot before, you want to lose your license, start talking about that. If you want to have, of something you saw, it's like, you do not talk about it, because they will pull your ticket, and you'll get a lot of negative scrutiny. So it was really interesting, Regina Meredith, right? Whoever, a lot of our people know. And I found it really interesting. She used to be a newscaster, right?
Right. Yeah.
70s and 80s. And she said there were just certain subjects that were verboten, just straight up, do not talk about it. If you try to do a story on it, It's not okay. And one of those subjects was the whole UFO phenomenon. That's just one of them. But now, as you said, Liz, it's like, hey, it's okay. Yeah, it's real. It's real, and it's okay now.
Yeah. It has to be verified, vetted out in some way. If the mainstream news is talking about it and not making fun of it, then to all of us, it's safe now to talk about. It's safe to think about. It's safe to think maybe that it's real and true. Where before, all this information has been out there. I was skipping through Prime the other night, Amazon Prime Video, looking for something to watch. And I counted 10 UFO documentaries that are available to purchase and to watch, and they're new this year. Now there's thousands of them that are out there and, in the archives, but, some weirdo is the guy who made it, or this guy's a crackpot, or that guy, most people did not take any of that seriously. Now these are considered mainstream, serious documentary movies. I think they all were, but I love this conversation, and I'm willing to say true or not true, real or not real. It is fascinating, the possibility. But for most people, it kind of draws a hard line in reality. You cross the line maybe religiously. That's a problem. Some people pose the question, if there's aliens, then there's no God. I'm like, I don't know how that makes any sense, but for some people that's real. For other people, I grew up in the religious world. Aliens did not exist because God didn't tell us about them. Now, in many religions, they are starting to say, okay, yeah, there's this phenomenon. Okay, yeah, it may be even in the Bible, but it is a demonic source. It's negative, right?
Right.
I've always thought, okay, if the mothership shows up, and everybody can see it and we know for sure. Problem is nowadays we might think it was, projected, computer generated of some kind, not real. But okay, if it shows up, then do we want to know what is their religious belief? Do we want to find out what they believe in? Because clearly they know some more than we do, right?
Right.
So it has the potential to kind of crumble civilization, or so we thought in the past. So I think that's the reason that it has been not okay to talk about publicly. But something has shifted. And as we know, a lot of things have shifted. Something has shifted, and now it's starting to be okay, even in religious communities, to talk about. It just depends on what your take is on it now.
Yeah, I think even in the Catholic Church, that they came out and said, yes, there's more life in the universe than just on this planet. Which was a big shift from when I was a kid, and when I was right up until I don't know how long ago, maybe 15 years ago, if you brought up the subject to me of UFOs or alien life forms, I was like, oh, you're boring me because you're so full of it.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, can we talk about anything more interesting? Because it's like, it's kind of like a child talking about fantasy things, right? And so it would bore me. I was change the subject because it's not true, right? Why do I want to talk about something that's not true? But then one day, and I know I want to have you share some stories too, Liz, on this. Yeah, I'm going to out you. Um, but I was walking down the boardwalk by my house, and I looked up at the sky, and I saw this. I'm a helicopter and a fixed wing. Liz is also a fixed wing pilot, and I'm looking at some lights over above La Jolla, and I'm seeing this light move erratically. And at first I thought they call it night sun in a helicopter, where the police have the light up the light up the street with they call it night sun. And I looked and I go, is that night sun? Well, no, they have it pointing towards me and the erratic. And I was trying to figure it out. I was like, okay, what perspective is this? Because it's moving erratically and helicopter can't do that. And a fixed wing, it's going through turbulence or something. I don't understand it because it was, this type of thing. And anyway, I just keep watching it. And then all of a sudden it was like, it turned different colors. It went like, it went and it like turned 3 different colors as it went out to outer space. And it was like instantaneous, just gone. I was like, wow, that was something. And from that moment, I was like, okay, all right, now I get it, and then many other things happened after that. But I know, Liz, when was your moment when that all became real? Or maybe it was always real for you?
It's always been real for me just because I have such a curious mind, and it never, ever, ever, not even I was a little kid in church, made sense to me that there wouldn't be life everywhere. You learn in school that there's like little bacteria that live in your eye. I mean, that makes me insane to think about. But, if there's that, why wouldn't there be that literally everywhere? If there's life, there's life. That always made sense to me. But I wanted to point out something you were talking about. As pilots, we're trained to scan for other traffic. If you don't see some other traffic, you get hit by them possibly. So there's reasons and ways that you stay separate, but you are constantly scanning. That's one of the first thing you're trained to do. So pilots, in my opinion, are especially good witnesses of these things to see what's moving, how far away is it, what altitude do you think it is, if it's a normal aircraft or not. There's very specific things to look for. You can tell what direction by what lights you're seeing, So many pilots all over the planet have seen these things. But here's the most interesting thing to me. Now there are videos and videos and videos, thousands a day that you can look at of people seeing these lights in the sky, exactly what you're talking about. And I'm wondering if people can now see them. And they were always there, but they couldn't see them before. Like, you can't see what you have no frame of reference for. If you absolutely believe something or don't believe something, that's what's true for you. I've been watching this great podcast. It's called Cults to Consciousness, which is another thing that fascinates me, people's religious beliefs. And in the work that you and I do, Bill, we are constantly seeing people radically change their perspective. And then what they can see becomes so crazy different. Like, 1 minute it existed this way, this is what reality was, and the next minute it's completely different. Well, this cults to consciousness kind of makes me think about the alien thing. I know this is a long way around, but because 1 minute these people are so fully in their belief system that that's the truth, that's their worldview. Outside of that, there's nothing. It's the dark void. They even talk about it like that, right? And then something happens. Something turns a light on in that dark void. And now they can see, wait a minute, there's other people over there, and they don't know about, this God that we believe in and these very rigid rules. And wait a minute, look at, they're not being smited. They're living okay. They're like dying of cancer because. So it's so interesting to watch and listen people's transformation. What is it that turns their mind on? So my question is about this UFO thing. There's something like maybe these mainstream videos, these mainstream media talking about it, that has now opened their eyes, and now everybody's seeing it everywhere. Mm-hmm. The truth is, I totally believed in all of it and was very skeptical about all of it at the same time. But seeing things, that is what's interesting. One of my most favorite is you and I and my husband, we went to Blind Frog Ranch. And, there's all the stories about UFOs, and I absolutely wanted to see something. So we all go to bed. My husband and I had a tent that had an opening in the top, a skylight, so you could see out, because that was the idea. You're going to sky watch.
Right.
But I'm telling you, like, we were all so tired, like we just couldn't keep our eyes open. So I'm kind of just looking up at the night sky, waiting to maybe fall asleep. And all of a sudden I see this flash. And when I first saw it, I didn't think much about it until I realized what I had just seen. And it was this huge flash that looked like 4 spades, like a spade on a card.
Yeah.
With a hole in the center. And then the whole thing sucked back into that hole. But it was so fast that my mind thought, at first I saw a shooting star. And then I'm like, wait a minute, that is not what a shooting star looks like. It was, and it had to have been huge. As I looked at the sky, I realized the stars that I could see, it had to have been massive, this thing. And then instantly you start to question, what did I just see? Did I see that at all? Did I make that up? I think this is the nature of how our minds works. And I have said recently, quite often, if you're part of our inner circle, you probably have heard me say this, but if the veil were gone right now, the thing that veils our minds from seeing everything, we would be shocked at what's standing right next to us, right? I think there's everything that's right here, but our perspective, the part of our mind that can see it, is not open until you see it and experience it. Then when you do, you realize it's everywhere. But only if you're able to accept what you saw, right? If you still don't accept it, if you saw it, it just looks like, oh, I saw a shooting star. But there's some shift that has to happen where you really know better than that. Don't you think?
It's interesting. I guess, when you see something, right, that is outside the scope of what is real or possible, then, you have to have some like ability to digest that. Now, it reminds me of that, what I'd heard, when the Spaniards arrived into Mesoamerica, and that the only people that could see the sailing ship were the shamans, because they were the only one with the consciousness that could. The others were looking out and they were like, what's there? I don't see anything. So I think that actually happens today with these UFOs. Like, for example, my first experience of seeing one, I had done some work right prior to it. I hadn't been able to see one my entire life. And then I had done some type of techniques that, to clear out the blockages, and then it appeared. And since that time, when I look up at the night sky, I had like, seen what I think is one. And I think, it's like, oh, is that a satellite, or what is that in the night sky? And it's like, oh, I said, okay, because these things, I now know that they're conscious, I would go and say, okay, if you're one, I want you to, would you please like fire up? And what happens is they'll create like this, like an explosion. Well, anyway, I was doing that, looking at the one, and then all of a sudden it was right over to the side of it. It wasn't that one, but it was right over the side. Boom! It was this huge explosion of light, and I was like, oh my gosh! It was, I would say, it was brighter than any star. Like, I would call it maybe times 100 stars, all concentrated in a momentary explosion of 100 stars, like that. I was like, wow. So anyway, you can try that, by the way, if you're listening or whatever, because it's a fun thing, because there's a connection. They're conscious.
Yeah, you know who's really big in talking about that is Dr. Stephen Greer. If anybody's interested in the UFO phenomenon at all, he has an interesting take on it. And it's all about consciousness, what they talk about. So they, go out and do a series of meditations. It's kind of a long drawn out thing. And then people learn how to interact. And they have pictures of all kinds of stuff, when I saw his documentary, I think it's the CE5 Contact of the Fifth Kind. I probably have that wrong, but something like that, Contact of the Fifth Kind. They show these pictures of these interactions with these things that look very much like light beings. So what it looks like on the camera is maybe somebody has a neon light that they move quickly, and it kind of looks like that's what it looks like. Well, then what's funny about that is I realized my friend and I've shared this publicly a number of times. Well, a group of us went up to Mount Shasta. We were up on the mountain. We had this whole little journey that we went on. That was like, we found these tree circles or not circles, but a pattern of 3 trees. We would go to there and each of us would do something, maybe a little guided meditation, maybe some sound healing, stuff like that. Little thing, just playing. We were literally playing on the top of Mount Shasta. I don't recommend it, but if you're untrained, maybe don't do it. We did it. So we're going up the mountain, and we went somewhere that doesn't exist on the mountain because we've been back trying to find it again. But while we were there, we were in this super interesting place on the mountain. Was the trees were very interesting. The geology was very interesting. And my friend took all these pictures with a camera, a regular camera, not a phone. And when we got off the mountain, we came and we were meeting up with a group of people, and we started to share our pictures, and people were like, what is that? We're like, what are you talking about? And it was those things, like they saw on the cameras, these beings interacting, One of them was a tree. You look up in the tree, and there's big trees on top of Mount Shasta, and there were giant red orbs in the tree, like a Christmas tree, and piled on top of each other, structures of things. I mean, it was wild. But here's the weird thing about that. Those photos come and go on our cameras as well. Sometimes they're available to look at, and sometimes they are not. And we're in a pattern right now where they are not available to see. Strange, right? So we didn't even know what we were looking at. We knew something happened that day. There was a lot that happened that day, but we didn't know what it was. And now Stephen Greer is saying these are these entities that they're calling in. Who knows what they really are? Are they alien? Are they interdimensional? His idea is they're interdimensional. But here's the thing that's fascinating to me about it. Once he and his group started doing it, now they can do it all the time. And that's normal to them. You and I know something similar. We see miracles every day. Things that should not be possible to change instantly.
Yeah.
And for us, it's like, meh, easy. We could do that. And other people probably hear our stories and think we're making stuff up, because that doesn't seem like it could be real. Only it's real in our experience, and it's real in the experience of our clients and students, right?
Right.
So this goes back to my thinking, if once the veil is cleared in your mind, you have the ability then to see a whole wider range of things.
Right.
Yeah. And as we have changed our limitations, so Cognomovement essentially changes the limitations of people's minds and feelings and responses. That's really simple. As we go through and kind of sort through our own limiting ideas, limiting thoughts, limiting feelings, really that equal limiting beliefs, more and more of these things become available for us to see, right?
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. Like, people talk about guides or guidance or help from wherever. That becomes super available. People
Mhm.
start to see auras. What other kinds of things, Bill?
Oh gosh, it really sounds utterly bizarre, but like contact, literal contact, like hearing a phone ringing, and hi, and it's your dead parents,
Yeah.
that are talking to you. Like, I mean, that sounds like mental institution type things, except when it's not.
You know
And
what?
uh,
Let me just say this. You know what I love about that? I was thinking about that story and how some people might, we're talking about the religious people thinking it's demons. All of these things that open up for people are just exquisitely positive in nature, right? They
yeah, yeah.
joyful and happy and generative. Their lives get better. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. What else? So the
Well,
phone ring, phone
that
ringing.
is
What
a
else?
that's a good point of discersion or discerning, right?
Discernment. That's a hard word.
Discernment. There's a couple derivatives
I
there,
don't think
but
desertion is a word, by the way. I think that's something else.
no, that's
No.
I made it up. The the these things, right? Uh, are very positive, right? They have a very positive feeling that comes right along with it. But smelling things that like the smell of flowers, and there are no flowers. Smelling of the scent of somebody who has passed out of nowhere, like instantly, when maybe there's the point of challenge in your life, and having that experience, the clearly the seeing of others' energy around them as a color. You can actually see it, or seeing an emanation, go out from one person to another of this color, if you will. Knowing that someone's going to call, and then they do. The list goes on and on and on and on. But these are just kind of what we know today that maybe we didn't know many years ago or decades ago, is that these are all just consequences of an increased consciousness or awareness. Another word for it is just being aware, a different truth.
Different energy, which is what, we've measured the voltage in people's body, and we know as the voltage changes, their consciousness changes. And what that means is the ability to see a greater picture, a greater world. I think in our work, we talk about this all the time. When your body, and we mean mind and body, are focused on like the tragedy in your life, the trauma in your life, the problems in your life, weird belief systems in your life, that takes up a whole lot of your energy and your attention. And so your body doesn't do things like heal or think or any of that. So when your body is free from that, we create freedom from those limitations through the work that we do. And when that happens, now the body has excess energy to be able to deal with and see all this fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like it wasn't there all the time. It was. We just couldn't see it, like the people in Mesoamerica who could not see the ships because they had no frame of reference for it.
Yeah.
And we are trained, I think, to be so concerned about problems and issues. And, even in our religious belief, we're sinning all the time. Did I step on an ant? Did I sin? Did I, just say, hey, you look great when maybe you don't, and that's a white lie, and I sinned. Our bodies are worried all the time about protecting us. When that is no longer the case, and we don't have that running around in our system, that our bodies are free, our minds are free to actually see and experience some of the amazing things that are available to us in this experience right now.
Absolutely. And it's just as natural as breathing. And when I think for most of us, all of our lives, we've been told, you know, you just got to change your mind. You just can't think those negative thoughts, or you got to let go and forgive those people and be more positive. And you're like, man, you know, you're not living my life, man. You don't understand.
You don't get it.
You don't get it. And the truth is that I think the big discovery is that we we're stuck. We're stuck. It's not that we don't want to. It's just that, you know, neurologically, we got a loop running, right?
Yeah.
It's just I think this, and then and everything outside of me says it's true, and
Yeah.
it is true. And so you don't have a good way out. I don't have a way. How the heck do I get out? Well, there's a method.
I think it's so interesting because it's just like this. So if you're one of those people who saw, you know, a UFO landed in these people's backyard, and it wasn't just that a UFO crashed or landed, there was people who weren't people, not human, 8 to 10 feet tall, wandering around in their backyard. It cracks me up because the kid was so calm. I'm not kidding. This is not a joke, right?
Yeah.
You know, they're wandering around in their backyard. You don't have the frame of reference to think about it, right? In that, oh my gosh, who might this be? What are they? What are they doing in my backyard? Where did they come from? You know, do you need a sandwich? Could I get you a Band-Aid? Like, we just don't have that frame of reference until we do have that frame of reference, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And going back to kind of the beginning of our conversation again, that once that becomes okay for them to say, then it becomes okay for us to say, right?
Yeah.
And then to think about, and now that that's happened, how many more people will see things in their own backyard, in their own house? I mean, you know, I think the problem is they should have maybe knocked on the front door. I guess they crashed, so they couldn't help it. Maybe.
Yeah. They, you know, maybe they should have been a little bit more friendly, like,
I mean,
you know, right? You know, this is really fun. I just love this romp here on the, you know, through the cosmos of what's possible now. And what I think is really fun for us is to see that it's become okay to change your mind. It's become okay now, right? It's become okay.
well, there's lots of things on the planet that are changing very rapidly that media would like us to change our mind about. And this is where I was going with that. I think I went off on a weird tangent, but where I was going with what I was saying a minute ago is that there's a way to know if you're not able to see something, if you're not able to get your mind around it, and that's discomfort. If you're one of those people who saw that, you know, they landed in the backyard and all of a sudden you're like, they're full of crap. There's no way. There's something that goes with that. And there's this feeling in the body of like maybe anger, pissed off that they're mentioning something like that, fear, panic. This is how you know your blinders are on, that neurologically you got a block, right? This is what limits you from seeing everything. So if you're one of those people who really wants to see the things Bill and I were talking about seeing, you can use this method. Do you get uncomfortable? Does it make you uncomfortable? If it does, you know that your nervous system is having a reaction to this thing that is not going to allow you to see the truth of it.
Yes.
You cannot see the truth of it because your body is sending off the pulling the alarms and saying fear, 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 right? So this is a method I like to use myself is, oh, I just got uncomfortable with something. And even if it's my own limitation, something I want to create in my life, right? And I think, I got, you know, I feel the resistance. I'm doing one of these things, you know.
Yeah.
I got a limitation. My body just told me. It's pulling the fire alarms on something. So I think, this UFO thing that people are talking about now, if you just notice your body go into some kind of thing that makes you pretty uncomfortable, you got to be willing to bet you got a little block around that. And it could be from anywhere. Maybe you watched a Star Trek episode that scared the crap out of you. Maybe it's that. Maybe that you learned in church it wasn't okay to think about. I mean, I remember, when I was kind of coming out of my church fog, listening to Wayne Dyer felt like contraband. Like, oh my God, this is the most woo-woo thing. And you know what he was talking about? Law of attraction, like nothing. He was talking about nothing. But in my mind, this was so scary and so out there that if somebody heard I was listening to it, that would be a major problem, right? So it's no different than that. And so anything that you want to shift your attention on, you notice if it makes you just uncomfortable. I mean, like, does your tummy feel a little butterflies or that sensation of holding on for dear life or resistance? Does it give you a tense neck or a little tightness in the head? All of those are signals that there's something to see that you can't. And what's interesting is what we found out, and the thousands of people who use our work, is that when all of a sudden your body goes to neutral, meaning there's not really a sensation about it. It's like, okay, so an alien landed in my backyard, big deal. Like when you get there, then you can see everything and you can kind of see through what the media is doing as well, right? You can, I see what they got going on here. They're trying to mainstream this thing. You can see if they're talking about, anything on the mainstream media. When you're super neutral about whatever the topic is, you see the kind of things they're pulling on you as well. You see where you're trying to be influenced, but you can't see any of that when you're in, fear or resistance. Don't you find that true as well?
Absolutely. And you know what? That's available in our normal business, school, kind of community life, whatever's going on, just your ordinary relationships. That is a very, very good point.
That's 100% true, because we've had people in our big seminars, our Cogno Conscious seminar, where 1 minute they're saying that someone in their life is the worst, is the devil, literally the devil. And the next minute they all of a sudden get neutral, and then their mind clears and you can see it happen in their eyes and they're like, oh my God, they actually really love me. They're not the devil. They really, really love me. But yeah, they got their issues, but I'm telling you, I'm their favorite. All of a sudden you see it happen. It's like the mask comes off, the blinders open, or the curtains part, and you're like, that was there the whole time.
Yeah.
I actually love that about what we do, and I do it for myself daily. I want to see what's on the other side of that idea,
Right.
So I check and see if I'm uncomfortable about something. I know I've got something I can shift to be able to see beyond it, to see what's more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the work. I love it, Liz. Listen, everyone, if you're interested in learning more about the work, cognomovement.com, cognomovement.com. Lots of good stuff there for you.
Yeah, or if you really just want to start experiencing the weird stuff on the planet that's super available, cognomovement.com, join our community. We have so much fun. If you guys like being in on our conversations, Bill McKenna and Liz Larson here, like and subscribe to the channel so that you can hear more of our crazy convos and learn some things. Bill and I put out a lot of content that are really educational and can change your life and open your mind in a way that other things cannot. All right, Bill, thanks for having this convo with me. It's one of my favorite topics. And
that was fun. That was fun.
That was fun. All right, we'll see you guys again soon.